Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, and rich, with a comfortable home and happy disposition, seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence, and had lived nearly 21 years in the world with very little to distress or vex her.
Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
Well, Dayelle, I wish I had the same life as Emma Woodhouse. I had plenty to distress and vex me. My 21 years.
Yeah. Hi, Amanda.
Hi. So this is a big one for you because this is your favorite Jane Austen, right?
I think it was the second Jane Austen book I ever read, and it immediately it might have surpassed my Pride and Prejudice love.
That's fair. This is definitely my second. And the cocktail that we're drinking today, we're remote. So this is hilarious because this is one that I cannot wait for us to make together. It's called Life's Not Fairfax. And I have a book called Jane Austen. If any of you cocktail nerds out there love these like corny themed books, highly recommend it. And it's some of my favorite ingredients. So it's gin, lavender syrup, lemon juice, and then you shake that and strain it into a highball glass with ice, and you top it with rosé, mint, and lavender sprig. So it's so pretty and so refreshing. And at the time of recording, we are in the midst of the most insanely wild stretch of heat in New York State.
Yeah,
it has been a sweaty,
we're
time.
Just currently in hell.
Yeah, it's not been awesome. So this sounds insanely refreshing, and I wish that I was drinking that. But right now I'm drinking bourbon and iced tea, and you're drinking bourbon in your coffee. So
I am.
Close enough.
Delicious. So cheers.
Cheers, cheers.
Also, I feel like any of the cocktails that you create for this, I love every single one that has mint, like literally any of them that you make that have mint. Mint is
so refreshing. Yeah,
mint and lime. I feel like those are definitely, as I try more and more cocktails, that seems to be my it's just so refreshing.
Yeah, you are definitely, without meaning to be, you're a gin girly because you love ginger, you love gin.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you love ginger, you love lime,
yeah,
like citrusy things, and you love like mint. And you're kind of a sweets person, but more of a savory and citrusy person when it comes to cocktails.
Yeah.
So you're made for gin. Gin and probably rum are going to be your jams.
Oh, I mean, coconut rum. That was my gateway alcohol.
Gateway drug. So this is one of those books that I have this with quite a few books in my life, but do you remember the first time you read it?
I don't know if I remember the first time that I ever read it, but for sure I remember being a teeny bopper reading this book and falling in love with it. Also, did we say what we're reading?
Emma.
Okay.
Emma.
I was just thinking, I don't know that we mentioned the book that we're talking about. Of course, Emma by Jane Austen, and it was published in 1815. Of course, not under Jane Austen's name because none of her books were.
It's her last published book.
Yeah.
In her lifetime. Let me say that. It's the last to be published while she was alive. And there were books that were published posthumously after she passed. But
yeah. So one of the things that I'm just going to jump right off and dive into, I loved this character. I loved Emma because of her just totally oblivious nature to the world around her. And obviously she's this, sophisticated, well-to-do woman of her time. And she lives with her father, who just dotes on her every, desire.
Our little hypochondriac.
Yeah.
A poor man.
And I think like she, obviously the whole story is her being a matchmaker or thinking she's a matchmaker. That is the story. And I don't know. I just fell in love with her quirkiness. I think she is very different than any other character that Jane has written. She just has a very, she's not afraid of who she is, and she's not afraid to just speak her mind, even if it's not great.
Yeah, she's so imperfect.
She's so imperfect, but I also love the fact that Jane also wrote Mr. Knightley to kind of keep her in check. He definitely is the voice of reason in this story, and of course we love him. And yeah, I don't know. I had to just get that out there. I love the character.
Yeah, because I actually wrote a paper on this book when I was in high school and I was taking these international classes. So I wrote a paper on this. It was my senior year because Jane Austen had written Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, and Northanger Abbey when she was a teenager. Mm-hmm. But she wrote this when she was at Chawton College. She was 39 years old when she finished it.
That's wild.
When she wrote it, one thing I loved about Jane Austen, she referred to her novels as her babies, as her children.
Aw.
I know, it's the cutest
Which is
thing.
so sad because if you know her story, it's
it's
even
so,
more
so
depressing.
sad. I know. And she said that she described that Emma was no Elizabeth Bennet. She wanted her to be someone less perfect, and she wanted to take a heroine that no one in the world would like but herself.
Yeah.
And it ended up, this is her most beloved character.
Yeah.
Unanimously across the board, people love Emma the most. And it's because of, like you said, she is the complete opposite of everything else, right? So she's not being pressured to marry. Her dad doesn't want her to marry. He doesn't want her to leave.
Yeah.
So you don't have that forced, you have to do this and fit into the society. And she kind of sucks at times.
Yeah.
But she has this beautiful growth by the end of the book that she realizes that she's been kind of shitty.
Yeah.
And she was totally takes ownership for it, where she's not just the flighty girl who just wants to marry and fall in love. The person she falls in love with is her imperfect self.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so
Mr.
true.
Knightley's the bonus.
That's very true. And it starts out as a friendship, a very deep friendship, someone that's just always been there. And then obviously she realizes that she's in love with him. But I didn't know that. I didn't realize that this was one of the most beloved. I think because I just always loved it so much, I never really looked into any I'm not going to listen to anyone saying that it's not good. So I just assumed, it's my favorite. But you saying that her character is kind of known as the extremely flawed and imperfect protagonist, which is such an interesting place to be for a main character, because normally the main characters are, especially during that time, when this book was written, you didn't write women to have these flaws. But then to also again, what you said is that she has such an arc through the book where, in the beginning she's kind of terrible. And
but in such a charming way. She's so obliviously terrible.
She really is. And that kind of circles back to the one of the main story plots is the fact that she I don't know that she befriends her. She takes under her wing this
poor girl.
This sweet Harriet Smith who is
Harriet.
just, it's kind of funny, depending, obviously we're going to dive into all the different adaptations because there's been so many, but she is this very, sweet girl who, it's funny because all I can think of right now is Clueless, but, which is an Emma.
Ty.
Yeah. But she just takes this girl under her wing, and she really wants to find her a husband and get her married off. And they don't know who her father is, so they don't really know if she has any money. They don't really know what her situation is in life. And so Emma kind of we have to pull her in and expose her to this type of life. And of course, if you've read Emma, that Harriet has already kind of started to fall for this sweet farmer boy
Oh.
And she wants to marry him, but Emma very quickly is like, no, he is beneath you. Mind you, like, she doesn't even know where Emma's.
We know nothing about this
like
girl.
the whole, there's so much around, who your parents are and where you stand in, society and everything like that. And so, like, that is a huge part of this where they don't know where her family really comes from or who her parents are. And so she just decides, like, I'm going to take her, and she is who I say she is. And Robert Martin, that's the
Robert
the
Martin,
sweet farmer. And he's such a sweet character. You get a lot more of him in the book than you do in like any of the.
Yeah, he's really beloved in the book.
Yeah, and like any book, the side, because he's definitely a side character, you get more of his story and like why she loves him and why she falls for him even before she and Emma become friends and stuff. Like, you get more of that and you actually find out more because she talks about him when she's talking to Emma, like not really understanding why Emma doesn't want her to be with him. And obviously that all comes back, but I don't know. There's just so many elements to this book that I just love. And then like we should just dive right into the adaptations because like.
Well, before we do, I have some justice for our girl Jane.
Fun facts.
Kind of, but it's really sad.
Oh, no.
So obviously, like we just talked about, so nobody knew that she was the author of this, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody knew she was the author of anything except for her very close friends and family.
Yeah.
By the time, because this is the last one that she was printed before she passed, like she was pretty freaking famous at this point. Like whoever she was, the author of these books was insanely famous.
Yeah.
And this was her most popular book. Like people were going freaking wild for it.
Yeah.
And she literally made the least amount of money for this.
Yeah.
And it's just the wildest thing. She got 10% of the profits that they made from this. And he negotiated it. John Murray, who is the London publisher that she published a lot of her stuff for, they put it in the newspaper on December 23rd that it was for sale. It went bananas. People were like, oh my God, I need this. It said like from the author of Pride and Prejudice brings you Emma. And so people went nuts. And all of her first editions of her first novels, they were completely sold out.
Yeah.
She made, are you ready for this?
No.
$300 from the initial sales. And after they took out their money for the reprints, her royalties were $55. So this girl brought home $55 for this novel. And it is just, that is just a fun fact of just pure vitriol. That is just so unfair that she had to do that. But I'm so grateful for her art. I'm so glad it exists.
Can you imagine if Jane was here now? Like, I think about like the authors that we have today where like there is such a cult following for so many of the like romance and fantasy romance and all the like, can you imagine if Jane Austen was on TikTok, like doing her little like, teasers and stuff for the next book? It would be so
insane.
Cool.
And she was so popular at this time that the Prince Regent reached out to the publisher and was like, you need to tell her that her next book, before Jane came out, the dedication needs to be to me. So the dedication in the original printing to this was to the Prince Regent, even though she didn't like him.
That's wild.
Because he gambled and had a bunch of mistresses. She was flattered that he wanted all of her novels in all of his residences. So he had copies of every single thing she wrote and every home he had. And he was the future king. So she was like, okay. He doesn't even know who she is. Like, that is just insane to me. It's just wild. But I also, to tie that back to what we were talking about before we get into the adaptations, you can tell she's a different person when she's writing this because the character has to come to terms with the fact that they are kind of a shitty person.
Yeah.
And that they do have to grow as a character. And like all the other books, it's more, I would say in Pride and Prejudice, it's kind of misunderstood personalities. Like you get to know who the person is.
And the classes are so different. So like your main character, obviously in Pride and Prejudice, she's she's dealing with characters that the lines are so different, so she can kind of have more freedom with them, whereas someone of Emma's class is supposed to be this very refined, perfect, marryable woman, and Emma was not that.
Yeah, she's just, no thank you. And so I did just want to bring that up because she is talk about just getting the raw end of the deal. Fucking BS.
It makes me think, I think of the movie Becoming Jane, just the whole storyline where, obviously, fact fiction. I don't know how much of this is true, but there is a certain level of she never actually was able to be with the love of her life. And, she went through her life just, writing books and living through her stories. But she did have a great love and lost it. And but
sad.
Not in the he died. No, he married someone of his state, the same level of wealth. And I would assume that so many of her characters, the way that they changed through the years of her writing them, especially since I didn't realize that she had written Emma so much later in her life, later in her life. She
39. Cow. Exactly. Oh, disgusting.
You can see you can see that she definitely her life was definitely affecting the characters that she was writing, just based on seeing this girl who is of this high standing in society, but she's very not perfect. And then throughout the book, she becomes a really genuine, loving, just kind person.
Sweet person.
Yeah. And I think that's beautiful because that's very true to anyone's real life. You grow up a certain way and you are who you are through what you know. But then when you go out in the real world and you have outside influences, it really changes who you become because you're learning from other things and it's teaching you how to live and be a good person or be a bad person or whatever, the influences might be. But you see that in this book. It's just, I don't know. Everyone should read it.
I agree. And
yeah,
I do have a list. This is kind of funny.
Ooh.
Every Emma movie adaptation ranked from worst to best.
Ooh, okay. How many are on this list?
They're not numbered.
Oh, shoot. Okay. I'm excited.
We know what our favorite is.
Yes.
But
should we say what our favorites are first or after the list?
First.
Okay.
What's yours?
My favorite is the BBC short
series. The same. It's so
It's
good.
What is it? Is it the
so
2009?
2009.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
it's just
so
everything.
Good. It's so,
everything.
So good. So good.
Badly done, Emma. How could you be so unfeeling towards Miss Bates? I did not think it possible. A woman of her age and situation.
I couldn't help it. How could I? Nobody could have resisted.
I could watch it over and over and over and over and over.
All day, every day.
Yeah, okay. All right, now I'm excited for the
There
list.
is one in 2010 called Aisha.
Okay.
It's an Indian remake of Clueless. So it's like a Bollywood remake.
Okay.
Then the 1996 Gwyneth Paltrow.
But I cannot desire that.
But why? I know I made mistakes, but had you been here the last few days, you would have seen how I have tried to change. Please, tell me I am your friend.
Also, I enjoyed that one. I
do, and it's like a fever dream. They did the set design and the visuals are just so. It's like Alice in Wonderland, but Jane Austen. I love it. Then the 1996 Emma with Kate Beckinsale.
Sorry, I think I'm confused. Is this best to worst or worst to best?
I think this is worst to best right now. I think we're doing worst to best. I think we're doing worst to best because this is not making sense. Okay. So then 1996, the BBC Emma with Kate Beckinsale as the Emma.
I have very little to say for my own conduct. My vanity was flattered and I allowed his attentions. He never wished to make me fall in love with him. It was a blind to conceal his real situation.
And that one's okay.
It's okay.
Then the 2020 version, which I just watched, and I have to say, with Anna Taylor-Joy, it was really well cast, and it was like a funny comedic version. Like, I laughed really hard.
If you wish to speak to me, As a friend? Or to ask my opinion? As a friend, I will hear whatever you like.
As a friend, Emma, that, I fear, is a word. Tell me, Emma, have I no chance of ever succeeding?
And I was going to add to that, like, I would say don't go into that expecting the book because it's not the book, but it has the same storyline, obviously.
The father in that
so
is
good.
the most hilarious. Moving the like shades for the heat. It's just like, oh my God, I laughed so hard.
Wait, I just get a kick out of how he stands. He like just stands so awkwardly throughout the.
So
he just like
funny.
comes into a room and then stands so like proper, and you're just like, what?
Like he's being painted.
Who stands like that?
It's so funny.
It's also very visually, that movie is very pretty. Like the colors are just
gorgeous,
so vibrant, and like the costumes are incredible. But yeah.
Yeah. Then they have Clueless.
I mean, I love that.
I don't know why Dion's going out with a high school boy. They're like dogs. You have to clean them and feed them, and they're just like these nervous creatures that jump and slobber all over you.
Ew! Get off of me! Ugh, as if.
So I think these are just movies because it doesn't include, obviously, our very favorite. The series.
Well,
because
that's
that
like
BBC.
separate. That's separate. And there's been like multiple BBC.
Yeah, but the 2009 is superior.
Oh, but hands down. There is one that was like 19. I'm not going to get the date right, but it's like real old and it's in color and it's watchable. It is very, very close to the book, like almost word for word. You get basically the book when you watch it, but it is very hard to watch because it's like obviously it's a Jane Austen book. So it's a very like, it's hard to follow because you're like, what are they saying to each other? None of this makes sense. And their hair is really hard to watch because it's like those really tight curls and you're just like, why? It's like the first season of Bridgerton.
Bad?
Like Daphne with her like little
No. What was it that we just did? Another Jane Austen. And I was like, I cannot with the hair. What was it?
Jane Eyre.
Jane Eyre. Oh my gosh. But the hair in the Jane Eyre with the hair in the front of the ears.
Yeah.
I couldn't over the ears.
Yeah. Like what is that? No one wears
I wanted
their
to
hair
tuck
like
it.
that.
I want
ever.
to reach into the screen and tuck it behind their ears. It was so hard to watch. But yes. Okay. So if you haven't watched the BBC miniseries 2009, it will, oh my God. I feel the way about that one that I do about Sanditon.
Same. I mean, that's like a whole other, that's like another whole.
We'll have to do that one.
I will say though, I was reading some like, kind of like back and forth about that adaptation and people weren't happy about Johnny Lee Miller playing Mr. Knightley because he's actually in another BBC. I'm not going to be able to remember which one. And people were like, but I only see him in that character. Like he was already.
Oh, he was in Mansfield Park,
Mansfield
right?
Park. Yes. I was like, what is that? I can't think of it. He's cast as one of the main, literally my brain is, I can't think of any of the characters' names, but he is that main guy in that. And so a lot of people were really not happy with the fact that they then recast him as, Mr. Knightley. But for me, it is everything I envisioned when I read the book.
Michael Gambon as Mr. Woodhouse. I mean,
it's perfection.
Come on.
And like,
he's so good.
What's her name?
Romola Garai.
Yeah.
Barry?
She just like, she is exactly who I envisioned as Emma, like to a T. And I don't know. I could watch this all the time. I just can't.
It's so good.
It's so good. And yeah. And she plays, I think the thing is like sometimes you get actors and actresses that kind of like make it their own, but it just doesn't work. Like it's just not quite the right fit. With her, like it was Emma. Like it was just totally and completely Emma. Like for example, with the Gwyneth Paltrow, I did not see her as Emma at all. Like the whole time I was just watching something else.
She was too bubbly to me to be Emma.
Too bubbly, and she was too
like, I don't know. She was too like head in the clouds.
She was too predictable. She like
I didn't love it.
Too much like every other woman. Whereas like I envisioned Emma as she's more of a, like, obviously she's a very pretty woman and, you know, wealthy, and she can, but I just envisioned her like more naturally beautiful. Whereas like with Gwyneth and even with the 2020, like they're all just done up so much that it's like, it was less for me. I don't know. It just wasn't the same.
Well, also the Frank Churchill casting in the 2009 series is so good.
It is really good.
Because you love him, but he's also kind of a sleazeball. But you also kind of love him.
Yeah.
And Jane Fairfax, played by Laura Piper. I also loved both. I will say the 2020 version and this version were my favorite Jane Fairfax castings.
Yeah. Also just...
Especially in the 2020 version, because Jane Fairfax is not... She's so built up in Emma's head,
yeah,
but she's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, she's so much of a bigger deal.
Yeah, and you get, again, obviously, like any book to story, to movie, whatever, you get so much more. So you, like, understand the whole drive behind it and, like, the reasoning why, you know, is it her aunt?
Her aunt, yeah.
She talks about her constantly. Like, more than what you see in the show, obviously. And so you really, like, there's multiple chapters of this woman just talking about this Jane, and it's just like this constant, like, oh my God, like after a while you're like, okay, I've heard enough about this character.
I love that they also say, like, Miss Jane Fairfax.
Yeah.
Miss Jane Fairfax.
To kind of like tie it into even like the when they did Clueless as like a spin-off from Emma, I thought and found it quite interesting that just the whole like plot of it. Also, I'm going off on a tyrant. I don't know if that's the right
tangent.
Thank you.
It's late, guys. It's late.
Also, the bourbon I think is kicking in. Wasn't Bridget Jones's Diary also
Emma?
An Emma, or is that a Pride and Prejudice spinoff?
I think we talked about this Pride and Prejudice.
Oh. I'm having a little bit of brain frog. I'm having a brain frog. Wow. Okay. Anyway, I loved that.
Pride and Prejudice.
It is Pride and Prejudice. Okay. Yeah. For a moment, I was like, wait, is there more than one, like, more modern?
Have we ruined this?
Yeah, that would be terrible. We've also talked about Clueless as in other podcasts.
And let's lay down the hammer here. I did not realize Clueless was an Emma adaptation until you and I did that episode together. Did you remember when you were telling me that? I was like, wait, shut your little mouth right now.
Yeah.
You shut your mouth.
And you know what's interesting about that is the first time I saw Clueless, I didn't know that it was. And then I watched it, obviously, you know, multiple times, whatever. And then very quickly was like, wait, why does this storyline feel so familiar? What is this? And then I like did a little deep dive and I was like, oh my gosh. Like,
and that's why Cher's outfit is bright yellow.
Yeah, there's just so many.
Of that, like, oh God, it just...
I mean, we could go on a whole thing with Clueless.
Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
I love the whole build up. Like we talked about like, you know, just different tropes of romance and stuff. And I loved the Mr. Knightley character is just like clearly in the beginning, you don't get the vibe that he's like, you know, like, oh, I want you, but there's like something there. And then the more you read it, like the more it builds. And again, you get more in the book because obviously in the show and the movies, you're not going to see as much of that because it's
so
all in your
subtle,
head.
Though, in the book.
It is.
It's so subtle.
Is.
I love it.
It's like a look or like a long like thought or something like that. But then just the fact that they're so perfect together, but like neither of them really see that until it starts to like become like what's his name comes into the picture and he's just such an ass. And
Mr. Churchill.
Yeah. And he just like, obviously he's I don't know. He's like creepy. I don't like him at all.
He's such a weirdo.
From the moment he is introduced, you're just kind of like,
Also, shout out to the 2020 adaptation because the guy that they cast as him,
I feel like I need to pull up a photo
hot.
to see.
He's hot. Also, I do want to just shout out, what was the Reverend's name? Reverend.
Oh my gosh.
The one that she tries to.
The worst? The worst,
but
ma'am?
who they cast him in the 2020 adaptation, because I just watched that one most recently, I was cackling. It was so perfect. Johnny Flynn as Mr. Knightley.
Yeah.
Mia Goth. Freaking love her. She's Harriet Smith. Oh, Callum Turner.
Oh,
It's Frank
Mr.
Churchill.
Elton. Mr. Elton.
Oh, yes. Mr. Elton is the fucking creep. He is such a turd.
He's so bad.
Played by Josh O'Connor.
In every adaptation, the book, anywhere this man is, it's just bad.
Creep.
It's just bad.
What a creep.
It's not good. It's not good. And then there's a Mr. Weston.
Oh, God. He's such a creep. But the actor that they had for Josh O'Connor, they had him as Mr. Elton, and he is just...
He's so creepy looking.
He's so creepy.
His teeth. He's got those really big, like the chiclet teeth.
Yes, he plays in The Crown. He's in The Crown. He plays the prince in The Crown.
Stop. Does he really?
Yeah, and he's now the king. But yes.
I didn't know that. Okay.
He's really good in The Crown. Right. But I was like cackling. I still think Bill Nye is the best cast for the 2020 because him as the father is just... Mr. Woodhouse. Perfection. But Callum Turner's hot in this one. They did good on that job. One. Clearly, this is what matters to us.
Yeah.
Guys.
So I had to look it up because I was like, how do they explain this character? So Mr. Elton is a good-looking, seemingly well-mannered and ambitious young vicar. Emma wants him to marry Harriet. However, he aspires to secure Emma's hand in marriage in order to gain her dowry. So that's the whole thing, right? Like throughout this whole, like the back, kind of behind the scenes, so to speak, in the book, and any of the adaptations, the whole thing is that he's very poor and he wants to be wealthy.
Very poor.
He sees Emma as like a catch, right? Like he wants to marry her because he knows that she's wealthy. And very quickly, you kind of see that throughout the whole book where, Emma's like, no, Harriet, you must go to him. We must go to the houses and give out bread and he will see you and fall in love with you. And the whole time he's just like, no, I want Emma. No, I want Emma. And then, like, obviously...
And our poor boy, Robert Martin.
Yeah.
Crying in the streets.
Yeah. Sweet, sweet Robert Martin. I think he, like, bumps into... Sometimes I get confused between the book and the BBC series, but there's a point, I think it's in the book, where after Harriet kind of, like, she's very she's upset about, obviously, Mr. Knightley, and she thinks that, like, oh, maybe I'm in love with Mr. Knightley because he showed me, he was sweet and kind to me at the dance and danced with me, whatever. She's walking down the street and she bumps into, I think it is the farmer's sister.
Sister.
Yes.
She's like, where are you? We miss you.
Yes. And then just like,
so sad.
And they're basically like, no, like our brother, like, wants to marry you. Like he still wants to marry you. He has never stopped wanting to marry you. And in the BBC, like he goes to Mr. Knightley and asks him, like, can I, and that's before like Emma has her turn it all down. But that's just like the sweetest little like he goes through all of this and is just like, and Mr. Knightley's like, he's the perfect person for her. Like he isn't above her. He isn't below her. He's exactly who he is. And he loves her. And so like, it's just this. And of course, Emma's like, no, you need to write him back and say no.
And it's so hard because in this time, there's like love matches were so rare. Yeah. You didn't marry for love. You kind of married for status, for a million reasons. Love was like the least likely reason for someone to get married. Yeah. And Mr. Knightley's like, they have a love match. Like they are in love. Like Let them be in love.
Let them love each other and take care of each other. And it's and the other thing that he kind of brings up too to Emma later is like, you don't know who her family is. So like for you to say no to them, she has no dowry. She has nothing to, and that was like the whole thing then, right? You had to, the female had to have a dowry or she was not someone that anyone would want to marry. And so it's an interesting.
Our husbands are screwed. You know what you get? About 14 suitcases of my emotional baggage.
Welcome to the modern day. You don't get a dowry.
A dowry.
When did dowries go out of fashion?
I don't know. Mine was my therapy bill. That was Henry's dowry. Had to deal with that.
You're like, here you go. This is great.
Can you imagine? Hold on. Can you imagine right now? Like, someone being like, I'd like to marry your son or daughter, and then being like, that's great.
Yeah.
We're going to need your Tesla. And if you have a Netflix login, we're going to need that. That's the dowry now.
I'm actually very curious. So I just looked it up to see when did it stop? So it says.
Imagine it's like 1984.
It's like, it's currently still going. You still. Oh my gosh, this is wild. Okay, so a dowry is a payment such as property or money paid by the bride's family to the groom or his family at the time of marriage. Dowry contracts with the related concept of bride price and dower, while bride price or bride service is a payment by the groom or his family to the bride of the family. Oh my gosh, never mind. This is way too. I just wanted to know if it was over and.
Well, I'm sure it's over here, but there's got to be some
it's basically
cultures.
like a dowry is the transfer of parental property to a daughter at her marriage. Whoa.
Can you imagine if you were like, I do, and your dad was like, here, Tom, have a goat.
I can't imagine. Whoa. It's just wild to me. It's such a different time, obviously. I mean, we've come a long way. Also, is this just mostly in England? I don't know that this came.
I don't know. Because dowries, they existed. We've seen. I have no reference to give you right now.
No.
But I know dowries were a thing. I can't imagine, because it was usually property and livestock. But also imagine a guy being like, or your dad being like, okay, so I've got 4 daughters.
Yeah.
Dayelle's worth 3 goats. Amanda's worth 1 goat.
Yeah.
So Amanda, go find a 1 goat husband. Dayelle, you can find a 3 goat husband.
It does.
What the
also,
fuck?
In the history of dowries, the United States, the dowry, it was brought over to the United States by a colonist from England.
Of course, those colonizing motherfuckers.
Terrible. I mean, on a separate note, back to Emma and Mr. Knightley, the one scene that I think about in the movie, when they're on the little hike up his, when they go to his property.
Oh, yes.
And he's, they're all going, and she's, of course, ha 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 with what's his face. They all sit down to have a picnic, and she starts saying not nice things about.
Oh, about Jane Fairfax's aunt.
And doesn't she say something? She says something about not her big mouth, but obviously some variation of her having she never shuts her mouth or something.
Yeah,
she says something really terrible.
It's awful. She makes a very self-deprecating comment about herself.
Yeah.
And then Emma's like, oh, that's ever stopped you. Or you'll ever stop. Something like that about her never shutting up. And what's the sweet baby angel's response to it? What did I ever do wrong to make her so mad at me? What did I do wrong? How did I upset my good friend?
She gets up and walks away. She's like, I'm just going to go for a little walk.
God.
And that moment, I think, is a really important moment to the story, because that's the moment where Emma really I don't think in the moment she realizes what she did was just really cruel. But then she's walking down, or she's in care. I forget what's happening, if she's walking or whatever. And Mr. Knightley comes over to her and is just like, do you realize what you did? That was horrible.
That was awful. You
don't
awful.
talk down to someone like that. Someone who is below you. And that sounds terrible to say it in that way, but it's someone that has so little and
looks up to you so much. And he even says, like, you know what she's been through.
Yeah.
She doesn't have much. Why would you take that from her? And like, basically, like, you've embarrassed her in front of everyone she cares about. And she looks up to you so much.
Exactly. And for what? Like, why would you do that?
To impress shithead Churchill, who's engaged to Mrs. Jane Fairfax, sitting right there with their little mouth shut.
And then, like, obviously they go on and, like, Emma's like, oh, wow, like, I definitely. And I appreciate the fact that then she goes and she tries to apologize. And there's, like, a whole, it's a little bit more drawn out in the book, too. But in the show, like, she goes to the house and she brings, like, a basket of, she always has a basket with her, but she brings a basket of bread.
Baskets.
I mean, I guess that's what
that time, everyone's just got Bridgerton baskets.
Or, like, the summer sleeve things,
The muff. Because your arm's broken. She called it a summer muff.
The summer muff. But I really enjoy that just because it's one of those moments where you can see the character.
Is this enemies to lovers, or like, is this friends to lovers / enemies to lovers?
Is it friends to lovers? I think is what I think. Because I don't think that they were ever enemies. Like they always got along. In fact, like they really, like in the very beginning, like they're really good friends and they had like go on walks and, do all kinds of, that century stuff that boys and girls do when they're unwed.
But they're not allowed to. That's the best part about Emma. You're not supposed to be unchaperoned, but like she's so like, I don't really give a shit.
She doesn't. She just kind of does whatever she
doesn't care.
Wants to do.
Yeah.
And I think too, like when Harriet comes to her and says like, hey, I think, she's so excited and she's like, oh my gosh, I know who it's okay that stupid Frankie is lame or whatever his name is.
Ugh,
Elton.
Creepy Elton.
Doesn't want anything to do with me.
Oh my God, I just realized they kept the name the same in Clueless.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's all coming back to me, baby. It's all coming back to me.
This is why when I watched it and I was like, why is this so familiar? And then, okay. And, but I love that there's a lot of, this is like maybe the original Friends to Lovers.
The OG? Because everything else was kind of enemies to lovers.
Yeah. And there's no there's no, well, also Mr. Knightley kind of makes her a better person. Oh. He like really shows her flaws and is like,
not afraid to
do better.
Yeah. And doesn't tiptoe around her and doesn't care if he pisses her off.
No.
And is totally willing. You know that moment where she's like, but I can't leave him, talking about her father. And he says, you don't have to. I'll move in. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'll live here. I don't care.
I was just going to say, the scene where she finally realizes like, oh my God, I'm in love with him. And
I'm in love with Josh. That scene?
Yeah. She goes after, obviously. Well, she doesn't go after. She starts walking up the garden. She sees him coming down. And there's that moment. I, of course, can't remember the lines that are said. But, like, she's basically like, does she talk first or does he talk first? I think he talks first. And he's basically like, I can't, like, I don't want to be your friend. I want to be your everything. That's not what he says. But I want to be your husband. I want to
rewrite
be
it right now.
Yeah.
Rewrite it, Dale.
No, because it's so good. I want to find the line, but I'm trying to.
I do not wish to call you my friend because I hope to call you something infinitely more dear.
Yeah, they're just at the top of the, like, where the road and the garden. I don't know. I can't visually place this, but just that moment is so sweet. And he just, like, is pouring his soul out to her. And she's like, same. Like, I feel the same way. I don't want to be with anyone else either. I love you. And then agreed, like, with what you were saying is the fact that she's like, but I can't leave him. And he's like, that's okay.
You're good.
Right. Move in. And then I love, like, in the 2020 version when she goes and tells her father, and her father's just like, well, that's it. Great.
Also in the 2020
he's so over the top.
He's so ridiculous when, well, I wouldn't say, like, not her maid. What do they call her?
Oh, her governess.
Her governess gets married. He's like, oh, poor her. Oh, poor her. Oh, bless her. Oh, poor her. She's like, no, poor her. She's marrying for love. Oh, poor her. Poor her. It's so ridiculous.
It's just, that's like a really entertaining one. I have to agree.
I
That is
laughed
definitely
so hard.
It's great. It really is great. But
it's a very
again,
unserious version, I would say.
It is.
Yeah,
yes,
it's very comical.
Well, to be fair, Emma in general isn't a super serious.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of serious in it. There are moments, of course, because you need to have like some kind of like drive for these characters. But I wouldn't say that this is there's no like, crazy things that happen like with Pride and Prejudice. There's the whole like, her sister goes off and gets hitched or, impregnated or whatever happens. Mr. Darcy has to come and save, he doesn't have to, he does. And then obviously she's like, oh, I love you. Even like in like Persuasion, like same kind of thing where there's like a whole, like he's going to, marry someone else, but she's like, oh no, I love you. There's like all these like very large moments. I feel like the only big moment is that moment where she's being really terrible to Jane Fairfax's aunt.
It is Mrs. Bates. Miss Bates.
Oh, Miss Bates.
Miss Bates.
Yes. She's so sweet. She's very sweet. Also, I just realized how young like all of these characters are. I mean, obviously in the beginning we talked about the quote and she's 20. She's 20-something
21
years old. Yeah.
21 years,
and like,
nothing will vex her.
Robert Martin, the farmer, he's 24. These are babies.
I know, but in this time, isn't that like basically ancient? Aren't you like half dead at that point?
That's very true. I was talking to actually our editor today about being babies, and we were talking about ages, and I was like, well, when I turned 21, I was getting married.
Hilarious.
So I can't really talk because we were talking about My Lady Jane.
Well, when I turned 21, I was dancing on bars for money. So
great.
Same.
I mean,
Same?
I probably should have been doing that, but I wasn't. And so we were talking about this other book, My Lady Jane. The main character in that is 16, and that's marrying age. And I was just like, great.
16. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 16.
That's horrific.
That's young.
I'm 37 and I'm still not married. And I have no prospects. And
But you're basically married. I mean,
27 years old with no prospects.
No prospects. Ugh, she's a great character.
She's fantastic. So Emma's just a classic. I'm really glad we did this one because I love how much you love it, and I love revisiting this because sometimes I get a little upset with myself that I read the classics and I love the classics, and then I just don't revisit them as much as I should.
Fair. I feel like that's a common thing, though, because it's one of those things, once you've read it, you feel like, why do I need to read it again? Like, I know what it's about. Just random, I forgot to mention these before. Just little fun facts about the 2020 Emma.
Okay, please tell me.
That when I did a little research for all the different adaptations for today's episode, one of the like top things that kept popping up and it like made me laugh out loud when I read it was a lot of people who are like diehard. There's a lot of like very intense literary people who do not like when Jane Austen's novels are made into these movies and shows and stuff because they feel like it takes away from Jane Austen's word. And I disagree wholeheartedly because I feel like she would want her stories to be told and retold.
And her name to be out there.
Exactly. And so sidebar, that's just like separate. But one of the things that I thought was hilarious is with the new movie, there's a scene where you see two fully exposed butts. Mm-hmm. And first it's Mr. Knightley is seen from behind, which is great. No complaint.
Not awful.
He's completely nude and he's being dressed by his servants. And then later Emma lifts her skirt to toast her bare bottom at the fireplace.
That is
and people
so
are like,
funny.
People are like, Jane Austen would never have butts in her novels. And I'm just like, get over yourself.
If Jane Austen knew about writing smut, she'd be writing the smuttiest smut books. Holding hands back then was smut. She was already writing Regency smut.
And then the other thing that I kept seeing, which I thought was hilarious, was Emma and Mr. Knightley when they're on the couch, like right after they like go in to tell the father that they're, well, not right after, but like a little while after they tell the father they're going to get married. They're making out, and someone's like, Jane Austen would never have a make-out scene in her novels. And I'm just like,
I forgot that they all had her on speed dial. That makes sense.
It's so funny. But this is the kind of stuff that people come out with and you're just like, really? Come on. Change with the times, people.
That's like saying Shakespeare wouldn't like anything.
Fair.
Shakespeare put everything in his place.
But whatever. Like, again, like that was a different time. And I would like to think that if Jane Austen was alive today, she would read her stories, right? Read the characters she writes. These women are strong, intelligent, not going to listen to anyone to tell them like not to do something or they can't have something or this is the way it is. And that's just, be happy. Like, no, she would very much be standing in the picket lines and, a true feminist,
queen of book talk
through and through. Yes,
she'd be on book talk, killing it right now. And she'd also, I'll tell you this right now, there'd be some smut in some Jane Austen novels.
My gosh, there's some soft, there's some like she tried.
Why
but, like,
do you think all of us young, curious little readers,
right,
devoured these when the language was so outdated? Because this is the OG.
Exactly. We heard love story and we're like, yes.
Sign me up times 10.
You can't hold hands, but this is awesome.
This is the best. So I mean, I don't even have to say it. Watch it or read it. No. Both. I mean,
both. I would say though, with that, like, you don't, with any of Jane Austen's books, and I feel like this is our second third, Jane Austen
second book? Yes, second.
I don't know how. I've read all of them, so I can't remember. But you 100% should read them. However, if you watch like the BBC version of them, it's basically like reading them. And you get the same warm and fuzzies. But if you're a true book nerd like we are, and you like want all the details and you want the storylines behind these characters that you see on screen, 100% read it. And do it before you watch it, because it makes it a lot easier to then get into the book if you don't really know what to expect with the movie.
I agree. We talked about this before we hit record, but I didn't reread for this. I did watch the 2020 version because I hadn't seen it, but I didn't reread. I'll be honest with you. The 2020 version just made me want to rewatch the 2009 miniseries. That's all it did. I loved it. Don't get me. I was laughing so hard. I was like, this is so quirky and fun. I love this. But I will reread it. I reread it like every 5 to 10 years, I would say.
Fair. It's funny. Emma is not one that I reread a ton. I tend to go to Pride and Prejudice or Persuasion. But
Persuasion.
Now, like after we've talked about it, I feel like I have to read it again. So,
well,
it's on my list now.
If you haven't, guys, give it a read. Also, watch the 2009 version.
Oh, also, don't listen to it. I know we talk a lot about Audible. Guys, don't. Jane Austen books on Audible, or any. It's
painful.
not. Don't do it. Just read it. It will take a little time, but don't do the Audible.
And I had given a friend this little hint back in the day because they were like, I just can't read the Victorian era and the Regency era books. Like, the language is so slow. And I said, it's not something you're going to devour in a sitting. Read something that's fun and light at the same time, but pick it up. Like, I always tell people, have this be the book you read before bed.
Yeah,
read a chapter before bed. It's very relaxing. Yep. You're going to smile. You're going to laugh. You're not die hard. Like, I have to get to the next chapter. You can just, it'll take you some time, but it's worth it.
It's not like fairy smut where you like literally can't put the book down. You're like, okay, one more chapter at midnight, and then it's 4 a.m. and you're like, okay, just
that's my
one
life.
More chapter, just one more chapter because he just came into the room, so we have to figure out what happened.
Yup.
On that note,
if you haven't, guys, head over to our social medias, watch it or read it pod. And I think it's fair to say by the time this will have launched, this will be our first episode that we can say we are on Patreon.
Yeah, head over to our
Patreon
page.
if you want to listen to us ad free, and we're going to be adding some more fun stuff on there. But head over to there, and as always, give us your recommendations. Tag us in your cocktails.
Yeah.
Tell us
all
what
that
you want to
fun
hear,
stuff.
friends.
Yeah, give us book recs. Like there are so many options, and we tend to always go with like our classics or like, you know, what we're hearing the buzz about. But we would love to get input as well, because there's just so many to choose from, and sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming.
And we just learned that we really love to cry while we record. If you haven't listened to the Bridge to Terabithia episode, hope you enjoyed that. Nice display of premenstrual emotion. So if you want to make us cry, just give us some crying ones. We apparently like to do it, so.
Yeah. Or thrillers. Or
yes.
You know, like
I'm excited for one that we have coming up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really excited. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Our editor is Katie Yonner. Our associate producer is Grace Heerman. Our production coordinator is Nicole Vargas, and our senior content producer is Kyle Bosch. Our executive producer is Tommy West, and Watch It or Read It is produced by Gotham West Studios.
Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue. Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.